Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Sunday weekly recap. This past Sunday, we were fortunate enough to have Miguel, who's from Arizona, and he's a DACA recipient, who helped us guide us in the conversation of what it means to have an accent, to learn a new language, as well as all the barriers and obstacles that we go through with it, and the shame that can come from having an accent and coming from a new country. So, Christian, what was something that surprised you in this conversation?
Something that surprised me, and I think I've already seen bits and pieces of this thing, but it was actually something that Miguel said. So I'm quoting him, but basically he kind of said something to the notion of when white Caucasian people try to learn a new language is celebrated, right? It's an accomplishment. It's an addition to their resume. It's something more that they can add to their experiences, and it looks good for them. But when someone of color, someone that is an immigrant, someone that is not a white Caucasian person, is looked down upon, and that's where we kind of start to see more of the emphasis on accents and how that is a lot of people explain that as as a tool of microaggression when it comes to language and speech, and how that is used and weaponized sometimes for the purposes of discriminating and creating this otherness, separation between people. So I think that's something that just kind of became even more apparent when he phrased it that way. What about for you? What's something that surprised you?
So for me, what surprised me is similar to what you had already said, how us as undocumented individuals, we go through these microaggressions, even as kids and adults, and we probably still will be going through this in the future. And then one of our audience members was talking about how she experienced a microaggression, not with herself personally, but that her mom was targeted because she wasn't understood when she wanted to pay for something or order something from the store. And I think for me, it's just as kids, we're not aware of this, especially as being undocumented. We're still kids at the end of the day when we were here. So when we see these experiences come from our parents, we're not socially aware of it, and then as we grow older and look back on it, we just have this anger or this regret of if we had known what we know now, we would change that whole narrative. We would demand more respect from that situation. We would be able to educate more people about that. So for me, it's just surprising how even as kids, our parents have always gone through this, and we weren't ignorant. It's just we were kids. We didn't know how to help our parents out. And now, with us taking back the narrative, or when we go out with our parents, we're able to help them out. We're able to advocate for them, and they are slowly learning to advocate for themselves because a lot of them are already starting to learn English again, going back to school, having more courage to be able to be outspoken. And what was one of the things that you think you learned from this discussion, or that just added on to something you had already been educated on?
Something that I learned, something new that I learned, or became more apparent to me was how much um, how much we alter or change our way of speaking and try to uh, make our accents less apparent depending on the environment you are functioning, right? So in a professional environment, we try to sound more professional, and in our community, we try to sound more approachable, and so we make these alterations to our speech to sort of I guess minimize the accent or try to in many ways fit in. And I think that the thing that surprised me the most is how much people were just um, pushing us to just be more accepted, like more accepting of our accents and celebrating them, But at the same time, to actually keep that in mind and be more aware of how much we actually alternate in our speech, because I feel like most of us are still working through those kind of negative attachments to our accents. And I think depending on where you're trying to go, as we said, those microaggressions and whatnot can be detrimental. So to me, it was just surprising how many people were they knew that they altered their accents to just not stand out in that notion of like you're someone with an accent. And then at the same time, how many people were just like, you know what, you have to own it, you have to just be proud of it. And just, we're trying to change this narrative of why is even an accent the point of discussion here. And for me, that is the biggest kind of like pain point, a lesson that accents shouldn't be the main, topic of this, because it only becomes an issue or a topic when we're talking about people from, like the immigrant communities or people of color. When a white Caucasian person has an accent, because we all have accents, it's not even a point of discussion. So that's something that surprised me. What about for you?
So something that I learned from this discussion was that depending where we and like settled down with our families when we were first brought to the country, it really kind of structured whether their accents were okay, were they not, was it kind of accepted, was in the middle ground. And I think for me, just hearing other individuals that are either undocumented or just come from a mixed status family, they were talking about how if they were from the New York area, Chicago area, or areas that were like a melting pot, they were more accepted in the sense they were very prideful of their accents. They didn't need to question, oh, is my accent different from this other person that I just met or that just came to the school? Everybody was more accepting of that. There was no question of, oh, do they know English? Whereas those of us, especially myself, growing up in a predominantly Caucasian area, for me, it was just always practicing English. And then, as well, with me having a hearing loss, I had speech therapy in English. With that, like, I was just learning how to pronounce and enunciate everything correctly in English, not Spanish. And so for me, I had that opposite experience from others, where it's like I learned how to speak English properly, whatever that means to other people. It was just I learned it that way. And I think just coming off of that experience and other people's that were quite the opposite, it's just learning that our accents are just very different, and the knowledge or the acceptance of what an accent is really just depends on where we grew up in the United States. And I'm sure it's the same way in any other country, like in Europe, or if you're in Italy, France, whatever. It's like we all have accents, and one of our audience members was saying it perfectly. We all have an accent everywhere, whether we're from New York, California, Texas. We all have an accent, and it's just that's the reality of it. That we shouldn't just make ourselves feel bad or have shame that we have accents, or even that our parents may still have that accent, or ourselves. So I think I just kept learning from all these experiences that we all grew up differently, and we have a different experience of what accents mean to us. With that being said, what was something that kind of stood out to you, or was very powerful, or if somebody said anything very powerful from their experience, like what stood out to you the most?
The most powerful message, or message that I distilled from this conversation was that our accents are important. They are a big deal. They have history. They are attached to our identities. And if you're not happy, or if you feel, any type of shame or discomfort on having an accent, then that's something that probably you should work on, because that is, to me, you're living without acknowledging or celebrating part of your identity, right? And we by doing that, by accepting it and by embracing it and by just being loud and proud about it, we are celebrating our heritage, our cultures, our history. And to me, I think that's the powerful message from this, that accents are unique. We should learn to love them, and in that we're going to do a lot of healing because we're celebrating ourselves, our identities, and our heritage. What was the powerful message that you took away from this?
So for me, the powerful message ties into what you already said, but a few of our audience members said it perfectly. It's just taking more pride in ourselves with our accents and not letting that affect us. And like you said, our accents tie in with our heritage, our culture, and everything that comes along with it. So for me, it's just knowing that at the end of the day, our accents are us and we should be proud of them. We should not be ashamed of them at all. And I think just those few words, just taking more pride in ourselves with our accents, was just reminding me, well, the next time somebody questions, why don't you have a Spanish or Mexican accent? That's on them. That's not on me. It's just, that's my accent and I love it, regardless if it's with it or not. So I think it's just taking back having pride in ourselves with our accents.
Absolutely. I think we all agree that this is like the tip of the iceberg, that this is going to spark even more conversations in regards to identity and language. And I'm looking forward to having those conversations. I think focusing on accents this time around opened a lot of good ideas, and it touched on a lot of pain points. And yeah, I think it's going to be great moving forward. What do you think?
Yes, definitely. It was just the tip of the iceberg because there were other experiences that were talked about, how some of us grew up going to ESL classes, how we weren't forced in a sense, but it was still in a way forced because it's like we're learning everybody else's language. How about you all learn our language as well? And someone had mentioned like now it's slowly becoming, the schools are becoming more inclusive in the sense of there are more interpreters, there are committees, there are meetings that are in the languages that you hear, like Spanish. And so for me, it brought back the memories of when I was here in the early like 90s or the late 90s, early 2000s, where we had to be more like everybody else and learn their language. And then now it's a beautiful thing that some of my family members in their schools, they're able to go to a Spanish meeting versus like an English speaking meeting. So I think even the whole ESL topic of how we grew up in that kind of environment, that will be interesting to talk about even more in the future with everybody else.
Right. Yeah. I found that very interesting, that even through ESL, which is supposed to be a tool of education for, any of the immigrant kids coming into this country and, getting to get acquainted with learning English, the experiences between even just that, learning the language, was vast and different. And I think it's a great topic to actually explore. I agree. But anyways, I want you guys to know that we appreciate you guys tuning in every Sunday. Again, we meet every Sunday on Clubhouse at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We are the Dream Collective. We have our own club now, which is amazing. We are excited about that, to just carve out this little space that hopefully grows into a big space for any of us undocumented immigrants, Latinos, person of color, allies, friends. You're all welcome to join us. Also, don't forget to follow us on Undocu Clubhouse and Instagram. That's where we keep everything updated, new topics, guests, etc. So, with that being said, thank you so much for another great recap, and we'll see you next Sunday. Any last words, Lizzy?
I think the last words I have is just letting everyone know that it's a very inclusive club. I want everyone to feel welcome, to share their stories. And then another fun thing we're working on is having a happy hour on Fridays at we're going to have a happy hour on Dream Collective at 6:15 Pacific time. And then slowly but surely, we're going to have more rooms opening up where other individuals that want to co-host or have a room specifically to different topics, they can be any day. So we're still working towards that. But for now, just look out for the happy hour at 6:15 p.m. Pacific time.
Sounds good. We'll keep you guys all posted and updated, and we'll see you next time. Bye.